Aquaman was a stunning visual movie that, despite being a bit corny at times, strikes a tone that is heroic and hopeful.
That was awesome.
This is in stark contrast to the dark, postmodern take of the early DCEU films. Now that it's clear that Aquaman is a massive success for DC, I want to talk about how this will change DC films forever moving forward. Join our fast-growing community of nerds and have your voice become a part of the content by participating in our polls and Q&As. Oh, and subscribing helps. Now, before we get into this video, I need to shout out Corey Marvel, who got the nerd card question correct in my Jude Law theory video when it comes to Captain Marvel. You definitely know your stuff when it comes to Marvel, and we'll do another nerd card question at the end of this video. I want to start this video by just talking about how crazy the hype is around Aquaman and how well it's doing. It's really crazy. I know here on the channel, we've been focused on Marvel stuff, a little bit of Star Wars stuff, and that's just what's been going on popular on this channel. But the reality is, man, Aquaman is a smash hit. And I've kind of always thought of this film as an underdog. I mean, when you consider the box office and critical track record of DC films lately, and the fact that this film had massive competition in December, a lot of people were wondering, is Aquaman going to rise to the occasion or sink like a stone? It's the first of many puns. Currently, this movie has made over $850 million worldwide, which is like absolutely crazy. Although it is important to note that it is actually the lowest grossing domestic DCEU film, which kind of leads me into my next point. Now, whenever there's a big smash hit like this, people in Hollywood always try to dissect it, reverse engineer it, figure out why the movie was so successful. And Warner Brothers is definitely going to be looking at Aquaman to learn a bunch of lessons and change things that it does for its movies moving forward. So here's 3 major ways that Aquaman is going to change DC films forever. First off, I think it's pretty obvious DC films moving forward are going to focus on an international audience. Now, as I just stated, Aquaman is the lowest domestic performer of all of the DCEU films, and yet it is absolutely crushing it worldwide. And there's a lot of differences between appealing to a mass market international audience and appealing to a mass market domestic or United States audience. Now, there are many different ways that you can appeal to an international audience, but the best way I can sum this up is by saying they're going to make their movies more like late 90s or early 2000s movies. Things like sexy movie stars, bombastic action with cool visual effects, and very basic plots and tropes play really well to international markets. Now, I could speculate about why this fact is, but that feels like a different video. I mean, just look at another film that crushed it internationally while performing pretty mediocre in the States, and that would be Venom. I mean, both Venom and Aquaman kind of adhere to very similar themes. I mean, they both have sexy movie stars, there's a female and a male lead, there's a romance there, and there's a pretty basic trope and plot. I mean, Venom is much like a buddy cop movie. Aquaman is pretty Shakespearean. It's those kind of old school kind of themes that we're used to in things like Game of Thrones and different properties like that. And whether you like it or you don't, that's going to be the future of DC films. They're going to focus on similar things to appeal to more international audiences. So that's basically the first way that Aquaman is going to change DC films forever, and that's real. That's going to happen. The second big way that Aquaman changes DC films forever is they're going to make them all way more contained. I mean, let's just call it what it is. DC was trying to copy off of Marvel, trying to get to the Avengers, trying to get that kind of money, that kind of setup. Their ensemble films were rushed. They didn't work. We didn't have any time with these characters, and that's so obvious to a lot of audience members out there. But it looks like this is probably a lesson Warner Brothers has finally learn. This will mean more solo movies with plots being more personal to the main characters. Warner Brothers is likely to keep the connective tissue to a minimum in the future of their DC films, or at least do this until they have a few successful franchises. Ultimately, this is a big change for what DC was trying to do. I think they're going to sort of downplay the shared universe thing, really not have a lot of connective tissue, just focus on their heroes and the franchises of those heroes. superheroes. Now, this is probably a good move, but I do hope it eventually leads back to another Justice League or some kind of an ensemble film. I mean, I think the shared universe thing is really cool. It's a part of the comic book flavor, but this is just another way that I think Aquaman is going to change these movies forever. I mean, you're no longer going to see ensemble films just thrown at you, you know, minus maybe the next Suicide Squad. I really do believe DC's focusing on solo movies, no connective tissue. Now, with this canon being downplayed, it does likely mean we're going to get a recast of Batman and a recast of Superman. Both Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck are likely done, and we'll probably see those manifest in solo movies as well with not a lot of connective tissue. So, you know, depending on how you feel about this, this could be considered good or bad, but this is definitely another lesson that Warner Bros. Is going to take away from the success of Aquaman. Now, the last big way that Aquaman is going to change DC films forever is tonally. I mean, as I stated in the intro, this is a very heroic, at times corny tone, which is starkly different than the Zack Snyder tone, the postmodern tone, everything that we got set up after the Nolan films. And it really does have to do with the success of the Nolan films, with David Goyer staying on as a producer for Man of Steel. You see that sort of postmodern take, that really gritty take. Now, it's clear that this doesn't always take, and at the end of the day, people that are fans of heroic characters want their characters to just simply be heroic. I mean, look at the example of The Last Jedi and how Star Wars made changes to Luke Skywalker, which, while are interesting, are not really what a lot of fans wanted. There was a massive backlash for that. People do not like it when their heroic characters aren't that heroic, aka Superman killing Zod at the end of Man of Steel, aka Batfleck using freaking machine guns to just blow apart a bunch of people. Now, this likely means you're gonna get a little less interesting plots, a little less of the deconstruction that you will see in other types of superhero movies, a focus on family, a focus on these kind of tonal things that really just are heroic and sort of lighthearted. I'm not saying that their future films won't get dark, especially the Batman films, but in all likelihood, you're going to see a focus on this sort of heroic, uplifting tone. And, you know, some people might call it Marvel copying, but I think at the end of the day, it's probably a good idea for your superheroes to be heroic. So that's it. That's the three major ways that Aquaman changes DC films forever. What do you think of this list? And what do you think of Aquaman? And are you excited for these changes to take place to DC films or not? However you're feeling about DC and their future movies, let us know in the comments section below. Now let's check that nerd card before we get out of here. I want to know, what is the name of Mira's father in the Aquaman movie? He was a badass king of one of the kingdoms in Atlantis. What was that man's name? Answer that question in the comment section below. And as I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.